So how did you start your creative journey in film?
Well, it's been a long journey because growing up, I was never the creative one in the family at all. I was all about the books and studying and really like that academic type of kid, didn't play sports. So when I went to college, I had a hard time trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do long term. Didn't really have people to talk to about like what long-term life planning, what that looked like and all these things. But the summer before I went to college, I accidentally linked up with my older sister and we made like this bootleg music video together. Like I lived in Alaska at the time, so we were like driving around all these little podunk places in Alaska, like filming the glacier, filming all this stuff, and that day was just so much fun. Not only because I was doing it with my sister, but it reminded me of like my childhood making homemade music videos with my family. And so when I got to college, I was like, I could kind of get interested in that film stuff a little bit. So I majored in that, and then as I was like learning more about like the medium, learning more about like the art form and how it can influence and move people to be better, to do things, to try new things, I really kind of just like took that and wanted to like just go all the way with it. So yeah.
Wait, so about this music video, was it your song?
It was not my song. So it's called Young Juneau, and for those of you that don't know, Juneau is the capital of Alaska. And we did it to the instrumental beat of Pound Cake by Drake and Jay-Z. And like at first my sister had like, she is a writer. So like my other siblings, they're all very creative. So she used to write, she was a creative writer. And so she used to always also write poems as well. So she wrote a poem, but the poem didn't make it to the edit. So it was just like a music video of her like just doing random things. It's so bad, but it's the greatest, probably the greatest movie I've ever made to this day. Because it's just like wrapped up in so many fun emotions and fun memories.
And so where did you go to college?
So I went to college in Montana. Little town, yeah, Montana, in Bozeman, big sky country. Yeah. So
what made you choose Montana?
Well, two things. One, I originally wanted to come to Atlanta to go to Spelman. I'd got like early admission, but it was very difficult to get a hold of like the admissions department if you're not physically in state to like pull up on them and like figure out like all the registration, all this process. So I originally wanted to go to Spelman, but then I didn't hear anything back from them in time, and then I got accepted into Montana State. I don't know how they found me, but I got accepted, and then I got mesmerized by the brochure. It was like this beautiful like landscape, this big old mountain in the summertime, and then when I got there it was -10 degrees and there's nothing but snow everywhere. So I kind of got bamboozled by the photo and pulled in, but I chose that state school. It was easier for my mom to help me kind of pay for it, so that way I didn't have to go into debt to get my degree, and I wanted to go somewhere like small. I wasn't really trying to go to like a big city or anything like that for education. So yeah.
Is there like a large film community in Montana? Did that sort of?
Not at all. Honestly, I can't tell you the real reason why I just chose to go there.
The brochure?
Yeah, like I was just like, it was more of like, when I had a college to go to, I just had somewhere to go. So it wasn't necessarily for me like, you know, I got accepted into Vanderbilt and got like a presidential scholarship, but the tuition was still so expensive. So it was more so like it was a decent enough price to go there. It was far enough away that I can kind of maybe figure out more about myself apart from my family, and just like all the things that I was taught growing up, kind of just finding a little bit more independence. And it was like a small town, like there was nothing really to do except for study, like because there's, you know, there are some parties, but I think it was just at the right moment, at the right time. It was just like the plan that I chose to go with. So there was no really deeper meaning behind going to Montana, but it was a fun experience. And now I always rep Montana, Bozeman everywhere.
Okay.
Row, row, row. That's our mascot, the Bobcats. The Bobcat, yeah, yeah.
Yo, I didn't. I don't know why I didn't know that you went to school in Montana, but I'm sure you told me before. That's dope though, because
Yeah.
I don't meet many people from Alaska, and then I don't meet many people that are from Montana.
Yeah, so I was just like progressively
go to
just
school in
like
Montana.
moving down to the hottest place, the warmer climates. But I've just kind of just been like one of those people where like if I feel like I'm called or moved to do something, I try to always act on that, and try to just follow that guide, like God speaking to you and all these things. And I think that's just where He wanted me to be at that time in my life. It was close enough I could still drive to visit my family in Washington and still be able to kind of like be independent a little bit, but still have pretty decent and fun community around there. So, yeah.
Did film inspire your move to Atlanta?
It did. That was my primary motivating factor for coming to Atlanta. My senior year in college, I heard that it was like the new Hollywood of the South. I wasn't ever the type of person that had like big aspirations to like go to New York or LA like that. And I think moving to Atlanta, I just wanted to get a start in my career. I wanted to actually be able to like grow and learn a little bit more than just like what I learned in school. Because while school is great, it just didn't teach you. There's a lot of things that you can only learn while you're actually doing art, while you're actually working in it and being around other creative people and like problem solving. And so I just thought Atlanta was a great place to do that. And there's a lot of Black people out here, you know, so I didn't have to look for you guys anymore. So that was cool. Like growing up in Alaska, Washington, and Montana, it was cool, it's fun, you know, experience different things like rodeos and Native American culture and snow and all this stuff. But I think I did also want to find a little bit more community of just like like-minded people that were creative, that understood the passion, and then also being around other brown people that, you know, you don't feel uncomfortable. Like there's not always like some type of tension in some spaces. So yeah.
Did you ever experience CP time in Alaska?
Oh no, no. And I tell you, that frustrates me. Like, don't have me at an event for 2 hours and it don't start on time. Cause what are we doing? But it's okay. It's all right.
And so what has your experience as a filmmaker been like in Atlanta?
It's been very hard. Extremely difficult, I would say, for two main reasons. One is because I'm a filmmaker that has a disability, like I have health issues, so that hinders me in ways of just like quality of life. Sometimes they'll hinder me from opportunities, not being able to go places, not be able to work on projects because I'm experiencing health problems at that time. And also it's been difficult because like I think I started at a rough time. During the pandemic is when I started doing freelance work. So it was just very difficult to kind of understand how the business of film ran when everyone is like lockdown mode, everything shut down. People don't have extra money to spend on creative projects because they're trying to make sure that they have food, toilet paper, and water. So I think those first couple years were very rough, also because I'm still now in the process of like constructing kind of like who I want to be in this space and like the brand that I kind of want to have, because it's very alt Hollywood, I would say. You know, I'm not trying to be like in the mix like that, like being at like industry events and parties and major things, like that's fun every now and then. But I would say like more impactful work is more like on the nonfiction documentary side. So just trying to find more so about who I want to be in this industry, like what are my limits, like what do I say yes to, what do I say no to, and then also being brave enough to keep going even though that sometimes you ain't got no money, you ain't got no friends, you ain't got no one to talk to. All you got is you and Jesus. Like it got rough, but I think over time it definitely gets better. So yeah.
When we first met, you were phasing out of your music videos sort of foray.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about why you don't do music videos anymore?
Yeah, it was more specific. Like, I've only done one music video. So it was a very short-lived career. Or done two music videos. Very short-lived career. But the biggest reason I stopped doing music videos was more so, it was very difficult for me to understand how to structure that type of relationship with other artists and other creatives, because on one hand, as a filmmaker, you're an independent artist. Like, you have stories that you want to tell, you have things that you want to accomplish when you're using your art as a medium, but then you're mixing that with the wants and the needs of the actual artist. So I think there's just a lot of gray lines that can get blurred when you're like competing for people's vision, and it's hard to kind of find that middle ground. And when it works, I'm sure it's beautiful, but I think I just had a hard time understanding how to have that type of relationship in difficult conversations with artists. Like, when it's like, I understand, like, that's what you want to do, but like, one, that doesn't make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense to the larger story, or like it just doesn't work. It won't work right now, or we just like don't have the budget. And I just think for me, one of the biggest things has been growing my ability to have difficult conversations and like conflict in these spaces, because you don't want to disappoint anybody. You want to ever tell nobody no, because film is still a service that you're doing for people. But I think I just had a rough go trying to figure out how to handle all that and still make the music video too. So yeah.
Well, if it counts for anything, I thought your videos were dope.
Thank you.
Super fast.
Thank you. I might have to, be like Michael Jordan and come out of retirement,
Yeah, put that 45 on.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite genre of film to make? Or do you have a
Well,
favorite?
I grew up watching like the crime shows, like Criminal Minds, CSI, NCIS. So any aspect of investigative in there, a little bit of thriller, a little bit of shock. So that could span across anything. So like drama, comedy, and I don't know. I'm trying to get into horror, but I'm not really a horror girl like that. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, it's not. I like the psychological thrillers and dramas, but I would say those are probably like my top three genres.
I feel like it's all the same to me, and I wouldn't be able to go to sleep after watching any of it. Whether it's psychological, straight up horror.
It's all scary. Okay.
Wait, so what draws you to horror? What you like personally?
Not that. I think it's interesting to be able to create something like that, like a story that is able to create that emotion in viewers, just because then you're able to understand how you're affected, and not even always positively. Sometimes you could be affected or manipulated by other things like that, like other emotions. I just think film is a great medium to kind of understand your emotions, because once you understand like, oh, why did this film move me this way? Like, why when I watched Jeepers Creepers did I get scared that he just jumped out of the sky? Like, was it the loud noise? Was it the fear of the unknown? Like, what are these deeper reasons why I'm actually being scared and feeling these feelings? And I think it's like a little bit of reflexivity that is able to be had as the viewer to kind of, be less gullible, you're not as influenced by your emotions, and you're kind of able to like build up a little stronger stamina. You're just not overcome by emotions as easily.
Have you ever delved into acting, or would you?
In college, I did an acting class. It was bad, okay? It was bad.
Was it really that bad?
It was, for me, it was bad. It's one of those things like, when you're doing it, like, it's fine. But when you see yourself on camera, it's a different story. So it's a different story when you see yourself on camera. Everyone hates how they look on camera. People don't like how they sound. They're like, why am I moving that way? But growing up, I grew up in the church. So we did a lot of like choir. a lot of dance, a lot of theater plays, and in high school I did theater too. Did a couple of plays. So I've done a little bit, but it's definitely not. I'm not trying to be Spike Lee. I'm not trying to be Spike Lee.
Oh yeah, because Spike does.
I don't need to have a role in all of my movies. I think I'm good. I let the true professionals take care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, you know.
So who is your favorite filmmaker, if you have one?
Yeah, I would say for the longest time, even till now probably, I would say Tyler Perry. And not necessarily Tyler Perry for the creative work that he does, but he's probably the filmmaker that I've followed his career the longest, because he did start in theater and plays, and back in the late 90s, early 2000s, like every family event, family function, like there was a Tyler Perry comedy like playing on the TV, and they were funny. Like the plays are funny, you know. So I just think that, and then him being able to transform and shift his career more into like the cinematic films, even though they may not be everyone's personal taste or preference, I think is still commendable for what he's been able to do. I've been to his lot, and it's a humongous facility. There's a lot of jobs that people are able to have and access to things that they wouldn't be able to have access to without him. So I just think his career and what he's been able to do and build just from a like singular idea of just wanting to make plays and tell stories about people that he loved. So I would say he's probably been my favorite filmmaker.
Super inspirational, maybe mine too, because I'm just like, yo, how do you start from like sleeping in your car to now you have this huge lot, everybody in the world knows your name.
Yeah, and the thing is, especially like when no one likes your work, like what?
Wait, nobody likes Tyler Perry?
People do not like Tyler Perry's work.
Somebody has to work like
No, people, there are certain audiences that like his stuff, I would say, but there's a lot of people that do not like his work. Because of the tropes.
Yeah.
They say it's like a lot of stereotypical images. And a lot of people, I think, more so are hitting on the fact that sometimes the filming, the way things are filmed and the stories are redundant. So I don't think it's necessarily that they don't like the stories. I think it's the redundancy of like knowing, you kind of always kind of know what's coming next a little bit. So, but it's just, that's preference, that's art, it's with anything. Like some people are not gonna like it and some people are. And then the few people that do like his stuff was like, he was able to do all these great things because of that. So, yeah.
So when you mentioned Tyler Perry, I noticed that you spoke a lot about sort of like his business acumen. Where do you see yourself in the future in terms of like being at the intersection of film and business?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I've never been the type of person that had a full plan laid out. There's some things that I would like to do. I would like to have some land reserved potentially like for filming, whether that's like a movie theater, whether that's like a space that people can rent out and use to shoot films and like be that support. But more so, I want to be able to help educate people a little bit more about the side of film that no one really talks about. To have like a couple films, I always said I'm gonna be like the woman Quentin Tarantino, where I make like 5 movies and then I'm out the game. But yeah, just to have a couple films that I've made from start to finish, and then just helping other people make the movies that they want to do. I'm not sure what that really looks like, but I think it's gonna be a little bit of different businesses everywhere, some aspects.
I feel that. Mm-hmm. So what's the driving force behind your creativity or your want to do film?
That's a good question. I would say at first, my drive was to, this sounds bad, but I just didn't want to be someone that wasted 4 years of a degree program and not use it. So that was motivating me for a little bit, because I was like, what would be the point of $100,000 worth of education and I'm not gonna ever use it? So that's one major reason. 2, my driving force has been like very selfish a little bit. I've always just wanted to make movies and with my friends and family. And being able to be a filmmaker, I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to create mini families with people that I work with on sets create connections. I'm able to use people like for old friends, family, like everyone is just helpful and wants to help. And so it's just a medium that allows you to bring in people. And like the autonomy of being a filmmaker is kind of nice, because when I want to have a family one day, I'm able to like step back and still do what I want to do, but also have that family. So, but now it's kind of transforming and shifting a little bit, honestly. I'm seeing film more as like not a product that you can make for someone, not a cool visual, but it's more of a service. So I'm trying to actively look for ways that my films can be of service, whether that's service of like telling the truth about something, telling a new perspective we haven't heard. It could be even doing service of like volunteer film work where, you know, people can't afford video production, but you're still doing it because it's a service. Like you're using your art as a way to help the world around you in some aspect. So it's a little bit.
So I'm thinking about right now the person who was watching this interview, right? And maybe they haven't made a film, or they've never picked up a camera, or they may be a little hesitant to pick up a camera. What advice would you give them on the road to starting their film career?
I would say starting is probably, so the best advice I'd be able to probably give is to really pinpoint where your fears are and then go into them. So one thing that I learned heavily like while I was in film school was like there was a lot of opportunities to like test new cameras or be kind of like the one that's experimenting, or that's the one that's jumping up and directing a scene, or you want to make, you know, do an actor choice or mess with lighting or do something with editing. But a lot of times you're hesitant to volunteer, you're hesitant to get involved because you don't want to have that embarrassment of doing something wrong. And so for me, one thing that I learned was anytime I was like, oh, I don't want to touch the camera, that's when I immediately knew that I needed to raise my hand and like volunteer and get over that, just because the fear of like what could always go wrong, the only way that will subside is if you actually get hands-on and start doing something. It doesn't matter if like you're just starting out studying, if you're starting reading, looking up articles, watching YouTube videos, buying a phone camera or a Polaroid camera. It don't matter. Everyone's journey is going to be different, but as long as you're always actively pursuing and not afraid to lean into your fears, because those fears will kind of guide you a little bit as to, you know, the route that you're supposed to go on with your filmmaking. So.